My name is Olivia Carter. I'm 28 years old. 10 years ago, my parents kicked me out of the house with nothing. At least that's what I believed for a very long time. For years, I told myself the same story, that they didn't love me, that they chose my brother over me, that I was never enough for them. And for 10 years, they never tried to contact me. Not once, until one day they suddenly showed up at my door, looking older, tired, desperate. And what they asked me next was something I never expected. But before I tell you what happened, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and tell me your country in the comments. Now let's begin. I grew up in a small house with my parents and my older brother Jason. From the outside, everything looked normal. We had a quiet neighborhood, family dinners, and what seemed like a stable life. But inside the house, things were different. My brother was everything my parents wanted. He was confident, charming, and naturally good at everything. He didn't have to try too hard to succeed. Teachers loved him, people admired him, and most importantly, my parents were proud of him. I, on the other hand, was quiet. I worked hard, followed the rules, stayed out of trouble, but no matter what I did, it always felt like I was standing in his shadow. At dinner, conversations were always about him, his achievements, his future, his potential. When I tried to share something, it was always the same response. That's nice. And then the attention went back to him. At first, I told myself it didn't matter, but deep down I knew the truth. I was never their priority. It started to change when I turned 18. My brother had just dropped out of college. At first, my parents tried to hide it, but I could hear the arguments at night, raised voices, tension, my mother crying. He had lost his scholarship, stopped going to classes, and started getting into trouble. But even then, they defended him. He's just going through a phase, they said. He just needs support. At the same time I was preparing to leave for college. I had worked hard for it, studied late at night, took extra classes, even worked part-time to save money. When I finally got accepted, I felt proud. I thought maybe this time, things would be different. I showed them my acceptance letter. My father read it, then handed it to my mother. She smiled slightly and said, "That's good." That was it. No excitement, no celebration, just those two words. That same night, I overheard something that changed everything. "We can't afford both," my father said. "I know," my mother replied. My heart dropped. The next morning, they asked me to sit down. My father looked serious. My mother avoided my eyes. "We can't support you financially," he said. I tried to stay calm. I told them I could work, take loans, do whatever it takes. But they shook their heads. "We need to focus on your brother right now." In that moment, something inside me broke. "He dropped out," I said. I didn't. But it didn't matter. They had already made their decision. A week later, everything got worse. My brother got into serious trouble. There were whispers about money, about the police. My parents were desperate to fix everything. And I became invisible. Until the night everything exploded. I was packing my things, trying to figure out how I would survive on my own. My mother came into my room and told me to reconsider college. "Just for a year," she said. But I knew what that meant. It meant giving up everything I had worked for. "No," I said. That's when my father walked in. The argument escalated quickly. For the first time in my life, I spoke back. I told them the truth, that I had always been second, that everything was always about Jason. And that was the moment everything changed. My father looked at me and said something I will never forget. "Then leave." At first I thought he didn't mean it, but he did. And my mother said nothing, not a single word. So I left, with one suitcase. No plan, no support, nothing. And for the next 10 years, they never reached out. Until the day they showed up at my door. When I opened it, I almost didn't recognize them. They looked older, weaker. My mother's eyes filled with tears. My father looked like he hadn't slept in days. "We need your help," he said. At first, I didn't even know how to react. 10 years of silence, and that was the first thing they said. "It's about Jason," my mother added. Of course it was. It was always about him. They told me he was in trouble again. This time it was serious. He owed a large amount of money, not to a bank, and they were being threatened. Then my father said something that made everything worse. "We need money." I almost laughed. The same people who had sent me away with nothing were now asking me for help. But then my mother said something that changed everything. "It's not just the money. My heart started racing. He used your name, she said quietly. In that moment, everything froze. They explained that my brother had been using my identity for years. Loans, accounts, debts, all under my name. I couldn't believe it. But deep down, I remembered. The night I left, all my documents were still in that house. I never went back for them. Suddenly, it all made sense. They weren't just asking for help. They needed me to fix something that could destroy my life. For the first time in 10 years, I felt something stronger than anger. Fear. Because this wasn't just about family anymore. This was about my future, my identity, everything I had built. And as I stood there looking at them, I realized something. They didn't come back because they missed me. They came back because they needed me. And this time, the decision was mine. For a few seconds, I couldn't say anything. I just stood there, staring at them, trying to process what I had just heard. My own brother, using my name, my identity, for years. How bad is it? I finally asked. My voice sounded distant, almost Chujui. My father hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. Worse than you think, he said quietly. A cold feeling spread through my chest. I need details, I said. My mother wiped her tears and nodded. They stepped inside. For the first time in 10 years. My parents were in my home. It felt strange, unnatural. They sat down and my father began explaining everything. Slowly, carefully, as if saying it too fast would make it worse. Jason had started small. A credit card. Then another. Then loans. At first he used his own name, but when his credit was ruined, he used mine. He said he would fix it, my mother whispered. He promised it was temporary. I closed my eyes for a moment. How much? I asked again. This time, my father didn't hesitate. 300,000. My heart dropped. That's not possible, I said, but it was, and I knew it. Why didn't you stop him? I asked. Silence. That silence again. The same one from 10 years ago. We tried, my father said weakly. No, I replied. You didn't. Because I already understood the truth. They didn't stop him. Because they never stopped him. Not when it mattered. Not when it could have changed anything. What happens if I don't help? I asked. My father looked at me, then away. They'll come after you, he said. Of course they would. Because legally, it was my name, my debt, my responsibility. I let out a slow breath. I need proof, I said. My father nodded. He pulled out a folder. Inside were documents, contracts, statements, signatures. My name. Everywhere. My hand started shaking as I flipped through the pages. This isn't my signature, I said. I know, he replied, but it looks real. I whispered. Too real. That's when I realized something even worse. This wasn't just random fraud. This was planned. Carefully, over years. I looked up at them. Did you know? I asked. My mother immediately shook her head, but my father didn't answer right away. Did you know? I repeated. He sighed. We suspected, he said quietly. That was enough. That one sentence destroyed whatever was left between us. You suspected, I repeated. And you did nothing. My voice was no longer calm. You let him ruin my life? My mother started crying again. We didn't think it would go this far. But it did, I snapped. And now you're here. Not to apologize, not to fix it, but to ask me to clean it up. Just like always. A long silence filled the room. Then my father said something that made everything even worse. There's a way out. I looked at him. What do you mean? He leaned forward slightly. If you take responsibility, we can negotiate. I stared at him, not understanding. Take responsibility? I repeated. It's in your name, he said. My stomach turned. You want me to take the blame? He didn't deny it. It's the safest option, he added. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're asking me to destroy my life to save his? Silence. That silence again. And in that moment I finally saw the truth clearly. Nothing had changed. Not in 10 years, not even a little. They were still choosing him, over me. I stood up slowly. I think you should leave, I said. My mother looked up at me in shock. Olivia, please. No, I said firmly. I've heard enough. My father stood up too. You're making a mistake, he said. I almost smiled. No, I replied quietly. You already made it. And this time, I wasn't going to fix it. I walked to the door and opened it. For a moment, they didn't move. Then slowly, they stood up. My mother looked like she wanted to say something, to apologize, to explain. But she didn't. Because there was nothing left to say, they walked out. And just like that, they were gone again. But this time, something was different. Because now, I knew the truth. And I knew one more thing. This wasn't over. Not even close. Because if those debts were under my name, then sooner or later they would come for me. And next time I wouldn't have a choice.